This is Defiance Daily, dispatches for the defiant. I am your host, Miles Taylor, and today we're talking about the election. If you were with us yesterday, we talked about what we need to do to protect the election, and today is a big answer to why we have to stay vigilant on multiple different fronts. We're going to open tonight by talking about this bombshell Supreme Court decision on voting rights, a decision that potentially opens the gerrymandering floodgates for Donald Trump, who started off last year with a goal of putting his finger on the scales to rig the election in his favor by getting more red states to add more seats, something Democrats have tried to hold off by putting countermeasures in place in different states like Virginia, which passed a ballot measure last week. But now this Supreme Court decision is raising alarm bells that Donald Trump may now be able to throw out the maps in more states. And then we're going to talk about what Pete Hegseth said and did not say in congressional testimony today, including about whether or not the Pentagon intends to send U.S. troops to the polls. We'll bring you that story and the details behind it. And finally, the House of Representatives adopts a budget to unlock $70 billion for immigration enforcement on Wednesday. Now, we're going to talk about what this means and how the GOP is pushing through a budget bill without Democratic support to turn the Department of Homeland Security back on and to add additional funding to those immigration agencies. I will also note that this has relevance to elections because another question hovers over the Department of Homeland Security, which is, will they send immigration officers to the polls in November? Something officials have continued to be cagey about. And then later today, we have the director and executive producer of a new film, Borderland's The Line Within, to talk about what is happening in our country at the border and what it says about America today and our future. This is Defiance Daily, dispatches for the defiant. Thank you for joining us today, friends. Let me say this at the top. If you are not a part of what we are doing, go check us out at defiance.org or at defiance.news. We are an effort focused on countering Donald Trump's corruption and his abuses of power in two ways. At Defiance News, by exposing that corruption, and over at defiance.org by taking action to fight back against those abuses of power. Every Wednesday on this program, we just did this last night, we announced real actions to protect our democracy. That happens every single week here. So if you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe if you are with us and if you are in this fight. And tonight you are going to find out why it is more important than ever. And that's because we start with what happened at the United States Supreme Court and what is now the third and final blow to the Voting Rights Act. Because this week, the court struck down Louisiana's congressional map, one the state was required to draw under the Voting Rights Act, after a court found the original map diluted Black voting power, designating two districts to accurately represent its minority population. Writing for the conservative majority, Justice Samuel Alito said the map was unconstitutional because it relied too heavily on race when drawing district lines. And what the court changes here is a standard. For decades, the Voting Rights Act allowed courts to step in when maps, congressional voting maps, intentionally diluted the political power of minority communities. Now, those communities have to prove intentional discrimination, as if those people drawing the lines don their KKK hoods as they're deciding what their gerrymandering is going to look like. Something commonly known to the extremely difficult to prove. As one election lawyer put it, you need a, quote, smoking gun to prove that intentional discrimination, which is why the Voting Rights Act gave the powers that it did. Which means that now finding direct evidence, emails, statements, something explicit, that's what they're going to have to do. And in most cases, that will not exist. No one who draws congressional maps to benefit one race or another is going to be documenting it. The conservative majority's reasoning for this ruling is something of a distorted utopia. It views that these protections are no longer needed in the same way they once were, that the law has already done its job, that we are now living in some sort of post-racial society, even though the President of the United States regularly makes policy decisions about which races and ethnicities he's interested in seeing come into the United States of America. This logic is exactly what Louisiana's governor is grasping onto as he plunges the state's voting into chaos. ABC News gives the details.
Louisiana's Republican governor plans to suspend the state's primaries after the Supreme Court limited the Voting Rights Act. The court ruled one of the state's two majority black districts was improperly drawn and relied too heavily on race. Now, Governor Jeff Landry says the state can hold its congressional elections under its current map.
I think this whole race baiting race issue on the redistricting has been put to bed.
ABC News political director Avery Harper is here for more. So, Avery, what's the latest on Louisiana's map and how this ruling could affect the midterms there? Because this is one of those things that keep getting punted back and forth in different courts, and now you have this ruling from the Supreme Court.
Right. I think that this is a very aggressive move by the state of Louisiana. There are a lot of wheels that have already been set in motion for Louisiana's primary in 2026. They are supposed to start voting in early and in person on Saturday. Absentee ballots had already been sent out to folks who were going to be using that method to cast ballots. It's possible that some of those ballots have even been returned. And so now we're waiting to see exactly what the path forward that the governor and the secretary of state are planning to lay out.
Well, there you have it, folks. You've got voters with ballots already in hand. And at the same time, the state is stepping in to pause the election. And this doesn't stop with Louisiana, because now across the South, Republican-led states are already looking at how to redraw their maps under this new standard, from Georgia to Tennessee, with calls for new rounds of redistricting ahead of the midterms. And you can already see how this ruling gets used. Just take a look at Florida. In Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis has already been pushing a new congressional map designed to add 4 Republican House seats, even as legal challenges are expected. The map keeps some black majority districts on paper, but packs more black voters into fewer seats, making the surrounding districts more favorable to Republicans. And according to reporting from Axios, this Supreme Court ruling gives him a major advantage by weakening the part of the Voting Rights Act that had been used to challenge exactly that kind of map. Do you think this is a coincidence, folks? Now, putting aside the obvious setup, the effects of this ruling will ripple far beyond just this election cycle. According to NPR, this could lead to the largest drop in black representation in Congress in modern history. At least 15 House districts are now at risk, and losing even a handful would push black representation in Congress to levels not seen since the end of Reconstruction in 1877. I want to bring into the conversation my Defiance co-founder, Xander Schultz. Xander, we joke about how Donald Trump has a time machine and he's been taking us back to the 50s and 60s. I had not contemplated that he's taking us back to Reconstruction and the post-Civil War period. But we may see visual evidence of that in the House of Representatives. I mean, this is pretty jarring that after an election, we may literally see fewer black people walking around Congress because this crucial law has been gutted.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that aligned with the guy's vision for the country? I mean, he spells it out everywhere. So it makes sense that he would want to make Congress more white as well. It's just so disheartening in so many ways. You know, I always envisioned kind of standing on the shoulders of the giants, my heroes, as we made more progress. It just feels like we're going to have to, Miles, you and I are going to have to fight the same fights our heroes fought for the remainder of our life. You know, hopefully we can accomplish it in short order and move on to what I would have considered progress, and the progress I envisioned when I was younger. This essentially kills the Voting Rights Act. Voting Rights Act is dead. If you weren't tracking in 2013, there was Shelby County versus Holder, which gutted Section 5, which gutted something called pre-clearance, which essentially meant if a state had a history of discrimination, they had to get DOJ approval before changing voting laws. That was killed in 2013. And now states can no longer be compelled to draw majority-minority districts to remedy Voting Rights Act violations. People can't sue to remedy discriminatory districts. So the Voting Rights Act is dead, which really, dampens the trajectory, of that Martin Luther King set us on and his great accomplishments in 1965 with the Voting Rights Act. Miles, when I get most bummed out about our fight against Trump and authoritarianism, it's really when I think about the Supreme Court and what he's done with it, because that is going to carry on beyond these midterms, beyond the impeachment. Hopefully we're able to, help engineer coming up here in the next year. What do you think their agenda is here? Like, is this just the fruits of picking the justices he picked, or is this a more strategic alignment with the Trump administration? How do you think about this?
Well, look, I mean, this has been something that conservatives in the legal realm have been going after for a long time. I mean, Voting Rights Act, VRA reauthorizations in Congress have faced hurdles. It was a matter of time before either conservatives in Congress with a big enough majority or a conservative Supreme Court was going to go after the VRA. And I will say, not everyone who's motivated in doing that is motivated by some obvious racism. In the case of Donald Trump, I do very much believe to my core that the man is motivated by racial animus. That's not necessarily the case with every justice on the court, but the effect is clear. The effect is clear. And I will say, Xander, there's not a lot of good news in what can happen here, at least from a judicial standpoint, right? Supreme Court rulings are very tough to reverse or overturn. And were that to happen in this case, it would need to rise to the level of a constitutional amendment, which seems very unlikely to happen. Now, here's the sliver of good news at the moment. A lot of 2026 congressional maps are currently locked. We are mid-cycle. The push for redistricting started last year by the Trump administration because they knew there was a limited amount of time to make it happen. Now, what's happening in Louisiana notwithstanding, which is surely going to get challenged in the courts, other states who have primaries happening a little bit later, you're unlikely to see them try to open up their maps for redistricting this cycle. But we have to worry about this in 2028, because as soon as this election's over, all of these red states are going to say, cool, the VRA's basically been thrown out. Let's redraw this thing and get another 5 here, another 4 here, another 5 here, seats that are going to be white, Republican, R plus, 17 districts to send to Congress. And that's going to make the 2028 election very, very interesting. And you're already seeing this lead to comments from Democratic leaders about the escalation and how serious it will get in the years to come. Hakeem Jeffries, by the way, Xander, was on Midas Touch talking about this, and I think we have a clip from him.
The guy's falling apart. The MAGA majorities in Congress are falling apart. The Supreme Court is a disgrace. And Ben, in the new Congress, we're going to have to do something about this Supreme Court. And let me be very clear. Everything is on the table. Everything to deal with this corrupt MAGA majority that is issuing political opinions that are designed to bolster the prospects of the Republican Party. And we will not allow them to succeed.
There you have it. Xander, what's your reaction?
In some ways, we talk a lot about Trump on this show, but in some ways, this is a tale as old as time with America, that there is a kind of rising new majority that is threatening the white patriarchy. And then there's an effort that takes place. You talked about Reconstruction post the Civil War. You can talk about mass incarceration, voter disenfranchisement then. In some ways, I think Jeffries is winking at this. We are winning. We talked about this the other day. We are winning. We are building a majority to take this country forward, to fight back against authoritarianism. And we are seeing a system, a incumbent system, and an incumbent administration doing whatever they can to try to hold on to power by any means necessary, rejecting, what the majority of Americans want, rejecting the spirit of a democracy.
What I will say to folks, unfortunately, when we look at the arc of history here right now, we're in a moment of escalation. And unfortunately, it seems like the escalation will only continue because, Jeffries is alluding to demands from some on the left to go pack the Supreme Court, to add more justices. If the Democrats retake the Senate, there will be pressure to get rid entirely of the filibuster, to push through legislation, to push through judicial changes. But I'll say, Xander, that same thinking, that same short-term thinking will come back to bite Democrats. And then it gets worse because they'll say, well, we're going to pack the court because right now it fixes it for us. Just like Republicans are saying, well, if we gerrymander right now, it's good for us. Well, in the long run, you've just made every blue state in America do the same thing. Goodbye to any red Republican seat in a blue state, because you're going to see even more states than, Virginia and California get into this gerrymandering mess. So right now it feels like for the next few years, the arc of history is the escalation continues and continues. However, if there's good news here, like a war, as the two sides are escalating, it increases the mutual win that there might eventually be for the two sides to de-escalate. Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen in the next year or two. It's certainly not. But you can imagine in a future presidential administration, in another Congress, there being an effort to reach nationwide accord on how to disarm, how to reduce the gerrymandering, reduce the judicial weaponization, and get back to a place where our elections are competitive again. And if you think that sounds too utopian and naive, I will just say, we are seeing things like this happen in states across the country where voters are getting so frustrated, they're proposing ballot measures to fix these things. So that may happen down the road.
I'm so happy you brought up that point. I heard this a lot on the progressive side when Biden got back in office about expanding the Supreme Court. We can do things that address the problematic nature of this that can be supported and be viewed as fair. We need to be the party that is trying to, forget the party, we need to be the movement that is trying to create a fair system, not a rigged system in our favor. We lose our entire narrative if that's the case. You propose things like justice term limits. There's 9 of them. How about 18 years? So every 2 years, we know every president gets to place 2 justices. That's how it works. There's ways to propose a more fair, less corrupt system that will ultimately serve us well, but also avoid losing the high ground in the narrative about a fair, just democracy.
That's right. And there will be a lot of options on the table, Xander, to try to diffuse this democratic with a small d, this democratic time bomb in our system, because we can't not just keep gerrymandering and packing courts. That will end up being democracy's self-fulfilling prophecy of ruin. But we have another more immediate issue to address, Xander, that leads to our second news story of today, because as states are dealing with changes to voting rules, there's another question being raised. What can voters expect at polling places when they get there in November? Are they just going to be expecting volunteer poll workers helping them? Or are they going to see guys with guns? This is a subject that has become increasingly pointed, including today in Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's congressional testimony. A big question has loomed over his testimony. Will there be troops at the polls this fall in the United States of America? Hegseth was asked this very question yesterday. Let's take a look at what he said.
This was 250 years ago. We're talking 2020. So if the president, again, I'm asking you, orders you to break election law, violate the Constitution and the law, would you follow the orders of the president? Yes or no?
The president, you like to insinuate that the president issues
it's a
illegal
simple
orders,
question.
Which he hasn't and does not.
Who would you follow, the president or the Constitution?
I will note that in 2024, troops were that was Joe Biden, by the way. Joe Biden were deployed to polling locations in 15 states. 2024, Joe Biden, troops deployed to polling locations in 15 states. Explain that one to me.
I am asking you a question now. You seem to really like Joe Biden. You've brought his name up more than many other topics today. Answer the question.
And Hegseth did not want to answer the question. In fact, his statement that troops were deployed under Biden seems to be somehow softening the ground, shall we say, for potential action this year. But we can't be sure. So again, today, Hegseth, testifying in front of the Senate this time, was asked a simple question during his hearing. Would he rule out sending troops to polling sites during the midterms? Here is the exchange.
20 election. He's asked for voter rolls for 29 different states. He just asked for Detroit's votes or ballots. And we know that in 2020, he wrote an executive order that he didn't sign that said to the U.S. military, to the Secretary of Defense, you should go and seize ballots and voting machines. A few months ago, he said that he regretted that he didn't sign that executive order. So the U.S. military has never been deployed. You incorrectly said yesterday that they were deployed during different elections. Governors deployed them under their authorities, but the federal government has never put the uniformed military at our polls during World War II, right after 9/11. We've never had to do that. So Secretary Hegseth, if the president, who regrets not signing that executive order to the then SecDef in 2020, asks you to seize ballots or voting machines in states during the 2026 election, will you stand up for the Constitution and say no, or will you salute and do his bidding?
Senator, I didn't get a chance to answer the front part of your question, which, there was a lot of deferred maintenance under the Biden administration that needed to be addressed because the world was in chaos when President Trump was elected.
Just address the election issue, please.
Well, again, that's
the most important thing. It's what's happening.
It's yet another gotcha hypothetical, which is your specialty.
It's not. We had an executive order
under the Biden administration in 2024.
It's not a hypothetical. I refuse to accept. You give that answer all the time. You and I have done this dance before. Get over it, okay? In 2020, he's the president, your boss, the guy you're performing for right now, told the journalists this year that he wished he signed that executive order to your predecessor. And your predecessor said publicly, thank God, we didn't actually go forward with it. What are you going to do? You're the guy here in the seat. It's not hypothetical. Tell the American people, will you deploy the uniformed military to our polls to collect voter rolls or machines?
Are you accusing me of performing? Because you're performing for cable news right now.
But
just
Mr.
answer the question.
Secretary, we have
It's a hypothetical. By the way, in 2024, under the Biden administration, 15 states did deploy.
Under their governor's authority, when their governors asked for it.
What did Joe Biden say about that?
That's fundamentally... I don't think anything, because he needed them for cybersecurity and for COVID. Trump did it too, under Trump. But it was not the federal decision. It was those governors of the states under their authorities, okay? It's never been done in our history. Please stand up for the Constitution. Do not send uniformed military to our polls.
Seemed to be the first time that Pete Hegseth was made aware that it was the governors who activated the National Guard to go provide logistical support at the polls previously, not the President of the United States ordering armed men to those polls. I want to bring Xander back into the conversation here. Xander, what's your reaction to the performance we saw from the Defense Secretary? Yeah.
Can we take a breath?
There's a real bang your microphone on your forehead moment for sure. Yeah.
The smugness that comes from these guys. I screamed at the screen like 5 times. I had to calm myself down. Hopefully, Defiance members, if you want to take a breath with me, feel free to take a breath. It's so infuriating.
He does have the smuggest face on the planet. I think if you asked AI, produce me an exemplar
face
of a smug face,
I'm doing it.
We already have that. We don't have to.
I'm doing it next time I'm off camera. I guarantee it's close. I guarantee it's close, if not dead on. This is also like not the first time they falsely claimed there was this precedent to the stuff they want to do. You know, when they deployed troops onto the streets in American cities, they said, this has happened before. And kind of making the same point, it happened at the governor's request. Outside of a few moments during the civil rights movement, happened at the governor's request, for support from troops, for support from the National Guard. It didn't happen against governor's orders. This is another good example of false equivalency, but they're almost like so. Sometimes I feel like, Miles, we're wasting our breath, almost like providing rebuttal to something they know is bullshit. Like to a certain extent, they want us having this conversation, and the conversation we should probably have is the one we do at Defiance, which is what can we do? We know what these guys are planning on doing. And every time I feel a little bit comfortable with what we've accomplished and how big the coalition's getting and how much we're protecting the election, shit like the last two stories comes up. And I go, okay, we've got more work to do. We have to keep organizing voters across different coalitions. We need to make sure that we have more people at the polls than they do, so soldiers aren't fucking around. There's just so much work to be done. And I'm so happy we started this thing in freaking October 2025 to give us a runway to have so many different things that we're actioning. I'm so happy so many of you are a part of this. And please, if you can, text another friend. We need more people. We need more people. We need more strategies. We need to fund more leaders. We need to freaking win. And if there's another thing out there like us, I don't know about it. So get your friends involved. We still have time. We have a decent amount of time up to these midterms where we can activate different strategies. And we have a lot. Miles and I were just going through our list of the people we want to fund. I had 5 meetings today with incredible folks. We have more strategies than we can fund right now. If you bring your friends, maybe we can fund them all. We can get this. We can fund the whole field.
It's true. There's a lot of work to be done. And yeah, we're going to talk a little bit later. But today is our 6-month anniversary as an organization, and we'll bring this up when we talk about our who is joining the Defiance and our wins of the week. There is so much that's been accomplished in those 6 months. And I'll just remind folks, we're not an organization that depends, Defiance News doesn't depend on some major corporate overlord. Our defiance.org actions are not funded by some secret billionaire. It's literally people out there doing this. You are crowdfunding the defiance in this country. So like Xander said, bring more people into the mix and we can guard against things like this. And I'll make one more note, Xander, because there's something else that we have done as an organization relevant to Pete Hegseth's testimony, which is there was something else he said. He was pressed by U.S. Senator Mark Kelly, and I was just on Nicole Wallace talking about this. He was pressed by Mark Kelly on whether he stands by his comment that the U.S. military will give no mercy and no quarter to enemies. Okay, that would be a war crime. So that would be just criminal. I mean, you ask any American POW how they feel about the defense secretary basically saying that implying that we will execute prisoners. And I don't think you're going to get a very favorable response. You can't do that. But here's the thing, Xander. Kelly pressed him on this. Does he stand by this advocacy of a crime? Guess what? I think this won't surprise you, Xander. He refused to answer. We're in a moment where the defense secretary of the United States will refuse to even commit to not breaking the law. He wants to leave open the possibility of conducting definitional war crimes.
He will commit war crimes. They are committing war crimes. They will do it. That's why he's not answering the question. They're completely open to committing war crimes. They're open to having domestic terrorist attacks here, either allowing for them or catalyzing themselves as they did at January 6th. This is who we're dealing with. They're not answering it because they know they're going to do it.
Well, and we're not going to stand for it. I mean, that's one reason why we've launched a number of efforts to hold the Pentagon accountable, to hold the Trump administration accountable, to fund whistleblowers who come forward and disclose these types of illegal actions. That's why we have to have people standing up, is so that we can make sure that we have the backs of the people who really do the heavy lifting, the people who come forward and tell us the illegal things this administration is planning. And guess what? Some of those organizations we've supported in recent weeks have managed to do that. They've convinced federal officials to come forward and blow the whistle, and that is crucial. Xander, I'm going to hit one more story before we bring our guests on, because it's important to talk about what's happening in Congress. Now, if winning on the merits isn't the path, you look for other ways to get it done. And today, Republicans took a major step toward pushing through immigration funding by restructuring the process itself to get it across the line, because they couldn't do it in the existing process. They couldn't get votes from Democrats to fund the Department of Homeland Security. The House passed a bill today to reopen that department, ending a shutdown that was provoked in part because the Trump administration refused to make reforms to make sure its agents were complying with the Constitution. But that bill passed today leaves out funding for ICE and border enforcement. Now, why? Why would you do that? I thought the Republicans wanted ICE and border enforcement funding. Well, that was intentional. That was intentional because Republicans are now setting up a separate bill, one that would pour up to $70 billion into immigration enforcement. And they're planning to pass it using a process that Democrats cannot block. That process is called the reconciliation process. It allows them to bypass a Senate filibuster and move this forward with a simple majority vote through a budget reconciliation. So instead of negotiating over immigration policy, they split the strategy, fund the rest of Homeland Security through one bill, then move an immigration enforcement bill through separately on their own terms, and then pretend they're basically the same funding bill and pass them by majority under what's called reconciliation. Even getting to this point took some maneuvering. Republican leaders had to use a special procedure to bring the bill to the floor, limiting debate and forcing it through despite resistance from their own members. So after weeks of delay, the path is now apparently set, and that path leads to a massive expansion of immigration enforcement rather than new restrictions on Donald Trump's police force. This now sets in stone a continued fight, one that is sure to bring a lot of tension this summer and this fall right back into American communities, because this is the system that is going to continue its terror, one where undocumented families live with the constant threat that at any moment they can be detained, separated, or deported, even though the administration said only the worst of the worst would be targeted. A system that has grown into its own industry with real human consequences behind the policies that we just walked through. And that's exactly what today's guests have been documenting. In the film Borderland, The Line Within. Take a look.
ICE is everywhere. The border is everywhere. For us, for immigrants.
Everyone in that team knew what the border was inside of them.
What if we knew the infrastructure that Hitler was building before World War II? What would we do with that knowledge?
So that you go from your house to your Dunkin' Donuts and you pass a detention facility and you don't even know that it exists.
The infrastructure that was being prepared
That was the end
getting
game.
prepared for massive separations, massive deportations.
I mean, that was the end game. We kept saying that's the end game. What does the removal of 12 million look like?
I want to believe that the judge is going to allow me to stay here in the country, but if he doesn't allow me, he has to know that I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight hard.
The system is geared towards, like the old cowboy movie, give him a trial, and then we hang him.
Put the camera down.
Give him due process, and then we deport him.
If you accept the militarization of the border as we are doing it, then nothing is going to stop any other crazy agenda in the future to militarize Chicago, Los Angeles, New York.
You will always, in their eyes, be the enemy.
Ahí nos hacen entender que no valemos nada en este país.
Somos la voz de esos niños que se duermen llorando, pidiendo por su mamá o su papá.
ICE no tiene por qué estar asustándonos, intimidándonos.
La gente que está en el Capitolio no necesita estar sentada aquí, porque tiene todos los recursos, porque tiene todo el dinero.
Nothing bothers power more than you looking at their dollar signs.
It wasn't just a story about Trump and a few Republicans. All of the U.S. political scene were engaged in this activity.
We have to look at what's happening right now in the United States. In this particular historical moment, the imminent danger is the rise of fascism. It threatens all of us. It threatens the promise of the United States. For all its flaws, it still promises something. And it's something that we have to keep on fighting for.
We are joined now by Pamela Yates, founder and documentary director at Skylight, and Paco de Onís, executive director and producer, whose latest film, Borderland, The Line Within, follows the lives of families navigating that system and the people organizing to push back against it. Welcome to the program, my friends. I want to ask you, you've been so enmeshed in telling this story. And I was in a different way inside of government, seeing this unfold. I want to know, being outside the system, but watching what's happening, what is your biggest takeaway? And where do you think we are headed as a country if we keep going down this path? Maybe, Pamela, I'll throw it to you first.
Sure. Well, I think the biggest thing is that people just don't know the amount of money that is being spent of our tax dollars that is going to capture, incarcerate, separate families, and deport people. And it's very hard to wrap your mind around 70, 90, $170 billion. I mean, when we made Borderland, it was in 2024 that we released it, and it was a predictive film that if we don't get together and organize better, this is what's going to happen. And then this is what's happening. So the film is now being used to help grow the movement to stop it from getting worse and worse. And an interesting fact, the original title of this film was Defiance.
Right, the spirits.
We fought you in the courts for it, and we're like, copyright, trademark. There was a huge suit, and then the settlement.
There's a battle between us.
Come on this program. No, I'm totally kidding.
I wanted to just ask a definitional question. I worked with a group called Worth Rises that talks about the prison industrial complex, and I was surprised reading their report at how much more expansive it was than just private prisons, right? We're talking about the phone companies, the commissary, the people that make the beds and all the stuff that goes into the prisons. When you talk about the border industrial complex, what does that include that people might not be aware of? Paco, I'll throw it to you.
That includes everything you just mentioned, the commissary, the beds, the laundry service, the food. It includes contracts with charter airlines to transport people around. I mean, what the border industrial complex has done is turn human beings into commodities that are worth, let's say $140 a night in a detention center, and for a charter airline to transport them from one part of the country to another, and then ultimately to deport them from the country to other places. It's business, and it's the business of moving people around as if they were, any other commodity. It's really incredibly cruel and nefarious. And if you see in the film, we just show all the companies that are really familiar to everybody that are involved in one way or another, whether it's the surveillance aspect or infrastructure, consulting. I mean, it's incredible, the reach of this border industrial complex. And now they've just amplified it tremendously with this increase in the budget.
But also, we made it so that people could act locally. So every single congressional district has a congressional representative. And at USA.gov, you can find out the latest statistics of how much money is going into each congressional district and who is the biggest profiteers from the money going into the border industrial complex. So locally is really the way to work this, I think.
I mean, in that vein, Pamela, as we've been as an organization focused on these secret Trump prisons that he's building around the country, I've had a number of folks ask me, why do you think ICE is building these in warehouses? And my answer has tended to be, why do you think the Nazis retrofitted train depots? Because they're turning the people into packages. They're putting these in warehouses because warehouses tend to be close to airports. They tend to be close to freight facilities. They tend to be close to fulfillment centers and also railroads. They want to increase the efficiency and decrease the visibility. They want this to blend into ordinary commerce, which is really chilling. And to your point about fighting back, that's why sort of the local, I'll call it NIMBY, not in my backyard ethos is one of the most powerful. And you guys talk to a lot of people who are pushing back. I want to know, what did you see that's actually making a difference right now on the ground?
Well, I think the biggest thing that's making a difference, or a big thing that's making a difference, is the way within immigrant communities people are organizing, strengthening themselves. And they've been doing it really in the shadow of the border industrial complex. But now they've also become very adept at organizing allies. And I mean, it's been building in Los Angeles and Chicago, but really burst on the scene in Minneapolis. And what we're seeing now is that organizations working for immigrant rights, they're having a really hard time absorbing all the people that are volunteering to come into them.
Oh, wow.
Like they want to be able to help them have a purpose in the organization. And they also want to help inform them. And that's where our film has really come into play for them. It's part of their organizing toolkit to get people up to speed so that they can. So I'm very energized by what I see as people standing up and coming forward and volunteering, and what's already been happening in the immigrant communities, but sort of sub rosa, and now just bursting out, and this alliance getting stronger. And we need it to get stronger, and we all need to get smarter.
Can I ask you to zoom in? Go ahead, Paco. Go ahead.
I was just going to add that the film also is being used very much to strengthen movements locally. Like we were just at a screening in Ann Arbor where they raised $30,000 at a screening for local immigrant rights organizations. And we've seen that happening all over the country.
Just before I forget, note to our whole team, we've got to talk to you guys about doing that. We would love to figure out date, place, screening, and Defiance.org members. Tell us in the chat if you want to be a part of that, or hit the heart button if you think we should do this. One city or a couple cities, we'd love to make this happen and to identify good causes, including some of the organizations that we've already helped fund. Maybe we can do some kind of match where we, whatever folks contribute who come, we can double. But I just want to put that note out there into the ecosystem because we would love to do that with you all.
That'd be amazing. That would be great.
That would be great. That would be great because we really make the films to help strengthen the work that you're already doing.
Yeah.
And so organizations can raise money with the film itself for their work.
We're really a human rights film organization. I mean, we're a nonprofit and we do this. It's like our human rights practices through film. And, like there's legal organizations that do it through the law, for example. We do it with cinema.
Wonderful. So I'm so excited to team up with you guys to do that and screen it for the Defiance community. That'll be great. Yeah, we should definitely offline about that. I'm wondering, because you guys spent so much time with these communities, with this issue, a lot of us are playing catch up compared to you. Like you said, you made this in 2024 and you've been thinking about this for some time. You've been watching the situation evolve. Like you've said, many people, allies, are now joining the fight. What do you think still needs to be scaled, and what do you think still needs to be started that you're not seeing out there? Either solutions that need to be more widespread or solutions that you haven't seen really exist yet in mass that you feel like need to be catalyzed. Either one of you.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to say something, Pam, but I was just going to mention that we were inspired, and we did screenings of Borderland all over the country, and in the Q&As, people were spontaneously getting up and telling stories, very harrowing stories, often about either themselves or their families, their parents, and immigrant experience, or neighbors of immigrants, for example. And so, and we have a lot of experience in truth commissions and truth-telling processes in the past with other films. So we've gathered a brain trust of experts in truth-telling, and we're organizing community truth commissions in immigrant communities around the country. We've already started that process. And and that's going to establish a record of what's happening, and it's not only for historical memory, but we've seen with truth commissions and other places. Eventually, it can lead to accountability. It can inform a prosecution, even though the Truth Commission doesn't have legal power, but it has the power of truth. And that's a whole layer that we want to spread around the country, and we're creating the model for that.
I would love to see truth and reconciliation in America. We're not so good at it yet. We haven't done it well quite yet, but hopefully maybe we get it right this time. Go ahead, Pamela.
I was just going to say there's an epidemic of impunity. And I think that it's important to address that impunity as it's happening. And our next project, the initiative, which is also a sequel to Borderland, is called The Truth Tellers. And it's really about how we tell the truth of what's happening at this particular moment. We've found as documentary filmmakers, when you feel like you can't change what's happening, you can't stop violations of human rights, it's really important to document them, because without that documentation, we can't use it in the future. It can't be used in the future to address this impunity.
Right.
Are there ways different communities have allied themselves with the immigrant community that you've seen that have been especially either effective or uplifting? I mean, I was talking to Francisco Aguera, who organizes immigrant communities here in Portland, which were really under attack a few months ago. I think there was more than 350 head of households that all of a sudden were taken, their families were left. And we talked about the need for housing these families who all of a sudden don't have their primary income earner, the need to support people in getting groceries because they didn't feel safe to get out. And those are kind of new muscles, right? We haven't had to hide our neighbors to that extent or support our neighbors when they lose their head of household. Except for certain communities where mass incarceration has affected it. But I wonder, as you all have spent so much time with this community, where have you seen certain interventions that you thought were really, really helpful and maybe underutilized or need to be in place?
Wow, we've been seeing it literally everywhere we go. It's amazing. Rapid response networks that are being formed, food pantries, people taking children to school because the parents are afraid to go out, and which has been seen in the Hudson Valley, here in New York where we are, and in Florida, and Lake Worth, Florida, which is 10 minutes away from Mar-a-Lago. There's this huge Mayan community that's really well organized and working with local allies, other organizations. And a lot of times local politicians who are sympathetic, they're really important too. So that what Pamela was saying about the local aspect is super important, because that's where we can really make a difference. With, going up against a Pete headset, like you were talking about earlier. That's kind of fruitless, I think, individually. But local actions can really have a powerful effect.
And documentation. Like, it's been incredible, the spread where everyone feels like they can be a documentary filmmaker, and more power to you. But anyway, just being able to, especially by the communities most directly affected by the federal invasions, that they have documented people coming into their communities. And we have a whole team of people who are finding and scraping and downloading all that material, because you know how it disappears, right? So we now have about 4,000 videos that we've taken with all of the notes and all of the attribution, so that it can be useful and saved as an archive.
Well, I know we got to let you go, but I just want to, if you haven't heard it enough yet, thank you for the work you're doing. These atrocities are oftentimes happening in corners of society intentionally, because we don't see them, and it allows them to scale this type of abuse kind of in the shadows, away from where everyday people kind of can see it and can organize and defend it. And you all are helping bring light to it. And I'm just so grateful you're out there. Before I let you go, where can people find the movie?
Go to skylight.is and look for the cinema tab, and it'll take you. You can go there.
Skylight is.
Skylight
is
Thank
easy
you so
enough.
much for
all
your
right.
work too.
Thank you, gang.
And Defiance.
Yes.
Thank you.
Everyone's fired up to see the movie too. We'll make it happen. We'll talk to you guys after.
Let's do it.
All right,
Amazing.
All right.
Amazing. All right. Did we lose Miles? Where'd Miles go?
No.
Oh, there
Miles
he is.
had to
From
Miles
the
just had to
shadow
quickly
realm.
take care of a technical issue. But Xander, we do have to do something with them. An amazing group, an amazing film.
Great.
I think we'd be remiss if we didn't do some kind of event, maybe multiple events. Let's see what we can make happen.
That sounds great. Yeah. I mean, my mind's going crazy already. Getting a bunch of our Substack friends. Maybe we do a mass screening, co-stream it out and get half of our buddies on Substack to do a watch party with us. Could be really cool.
Yeah. Listen, folks in the chat, tell us what cities we need to do this in.
No. Save our families. Let's do it virtually. And let them go on the tour. I want to stream it up Substack.
Fine. Well, we go today, Xander, to the last segment that we have every day. And today it's a little bit different. We are doing Who is Joining the Defiance, our final segment. But today we have a guest for Who is Joining the Defiance, a special guest. We're going to welcome into the program National Press Coordinator for the 5051 movement, Hunter Dunn. Now, Hunter, we usually use this time of the program to highlight those unique stories of people joining the Defiance. But today, with you, we want to discuss a movement that is happening tomorrow that is very, very important, that will allow everyone to visibly show that they are joining the Defiance. Hunter, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. So building off of the success of the No Kings protests, where 8 million people came together on March 28th to rally and march in defiance of the want-to-be king, the wannabe fascist, in currently occupying the White House, we're taking the movement to the next step. As part of the May Day Strong Coalition, 5051's organizing with over 500 labor unions and other resistance groups across the country to organize a anticipated over 3,000 Workers Over Billionaires National Day of Actions on May Day, May 1st, a historically important day for the labor movement. This action, we are already seeing the impacts of May Day's planned nonviolent economic disruption. In Louisiana, in New Orleans, workers are starting a 5-day strike at one of the most important hospitals in the state against terrible working conditions there. In North Carolina, 21 school districts have shut down, allowing educators to go to the state capitol to pressure the legislators directly. Sunrise Movement's reporting that over 100,000 students are joining in walkouts tomorrow, which would make it the largest single-day coordinated student protest across the country this decade. And over a dozen major metropolitan areas are calling for a day of no work, no school, no spending, and economic blackout in their communities against the large corporations that are funding the attacks on our rights, right? We're talking about, we have 3 specific demands. One is to tax the rich, to make the billionaires pay fairly instead of letting them rig and buy our elections. The second one is no ICE and no war, right? Abolish ICE and stop the war in Iran. Why are we spending billions of dollars on a foreign forever war that is just killing innocent people when we could be funding healthcare? Why have we cut healthcare to do that? And then the third and final one is to expand democracy instead of corporate rule, something that has become much more important after the terrible court decision we saw yesterday.
What a week to do it on. You're doing it on Ballroom Week.
Administration's you guys picked it.
Hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money, and corporations are getting hundreds of billions of dollars in kickbacks for supporting the Ballroom. It's maybe the least populist platform in American presidency history. I wonder, you called this the next phase, the next step. It's an add-on. It is another step forward from a No Kings type protest. Can you explain that more? Why is this more advanced? What is the importance of Americans being able to carry out an economic boycott like this? Can you give a little more color there?
Yeah. So the No Kings protests have 3 main goals, one of which is just solidarity, right? Getting a bunch of people out there to show that we, the people, demand no kings in America, that we are against the authoritarian power grab that this administration is taking part in, this administration is orchestrating. The second one is, in some cases, to put pressure on very specific situations. The first no king sort of correlated with the invasion of Los Angeles, the occupation of Los Angeles by Donald Trump. I was there on the ground the same day David Huerta was arrested and brutalized. I was tear gassed by this administration's law enforcement, which is, just...
It's a badge of honor now, man. You're going to be able to tell your grandkids that.
Many people have had it much worse than I have, but, I'm honored to do what part I can do. But then the third thing is to recruit people and get them involved in the resistance, right? This resistance isn't a sprint, and it's also not a marathon. It's more like a relay race, handoff between those large national mobilizations and local direct actions, getting involved, organizing against concentration camps, AI data centers, organizing mutual aid, organizing in your workplace. But May Day is different in that it's taking the next step of those National Day of Actions, and it's shifting it from merely coming together in opposition to something to coming together for something, and in doing that, putting economic pressure on the billionaires funding this regime, and yes, funding the ballroom.
Wonderful.
I kind of think, I don't know,
Go ahead,
Xander.
Miles.
Sometimes I think if you can't beat them, join them. Like maybe we should just do a whole pro ballroom campaign. I don't know. This sounds like a lot of work.
You're good for it.
Yeah, I think we just flip back to the other side. No, I'm kidding. I will remind Defiance.org members, if you weren't with us the other week, this is an effort we are so thrilled to support and help fund. Hunter, before we jump, I want you to remind folks where they can go find that information to join, and why it's so important tomorrow to participate, especially in view towards the midterms, in light of all the things that we heard this week, including the defense secretary refusing to say whether troops were going to be sent to the polls.
Yes. I'm going to reverse that. I'm going to start with why it's important and then where you can go once we hopefully hype up your audience enough, right? So
they're pretty hyped. I see them in the comments. They're pre-hyped, but go for it.
I can't see it, but I believe you. Straightforwardly, this administration is looking for every opportunity they can to make your life worse if you are worth less than $1 billion US, right? It's easier for them to, in the words of famous TV show Andor, hide behind 40 atrocities than a single incident. So they are trying to attack you on every front they possibly can, whether it's labor rights, immigrant rights, the rights of Black and brown people to vote in fair elections and have their voice heard, on cutting our healthcare, cutting our social services, starting selective service, and threatening to do a draft in Iran, not just put troops on the ground, but automatically registering people my age. It's really concerning, right? So there's steps, and it's important to stand up for everyone, right? And that starts with the most base level of solidarity, which is worker solidarity. We, the people of the United States, not just the 99%, but like the 99.999% are all in this together. And on May Day, we are bringing together everyone from diamond blue Chicago to purple areas like Minnesota, which have faced the brunt of Trump's wrath, to red heartland areas in Missouri. We are seeing a large coalition across race, class, creed, every possible person we are seeing coming out, not just for No Kings, but for May Day. And we need you to be part of that, because we need to build this people power so that we're ready if Trump tries to shut down the midterms or rig an election, do a draft, attack Greenland. We have to build this protest muscle so that we can do what they do in Europe, where we can stand up peacefully against our leaders and get them to cave to our demands. And economic pressure is the next step of that. And that's why we need you involved on May Day. So to get involved, you can go to maydaystrong.org and find the nearest public action near you. But if you're in a labor union or one of these organizations already, there are even more actions, over 3,000, that aren't covered on this map. And if you're curious about 5051, you can go find us at 5050.1. That's the word 50, the word 50, period, the word 1. But no matter which group you get involved with, the most important thing for you to do is to go to May Day and then get involved with one of the groups organizing on the ground. Because that local organizing, that local community building, that's what's going to help us build the momentum to take our country back and save our neighbors.
And also, I'd remind people, Hunter, guys, this is an economic strike. This is not like a hunger strike, okay? So don't be like little sissies about it and say, like, I can't participate. This is like a literally, like, don't spend money and don't go to work. These are things that you always tell yourself you want to do. You don't want to go to work. You think you're spending too much money. No one's telling you not to drink coffee and not to eat food. So like, if you can't do this tomorrow, you probably can't protect your democracy.
Hunter, what do you think of our organizing tactics? We just call it, we call our members, don't be a little sissy. What do you think?
Maybe not the tactic I do, but if you want to make your point even stronger, there are small businesses that are shutting down in coordination with this protest. There have been major interviews in, like, for example, the Evanston Roundtable talking about local businesses in places like Chicago that are shutting down in solidarity. If you want to go support a small business that's helping out the strike, that's something that we would totally recommend. Sorry, the economic blackout. But if a small business can do it, their livelihood depends on it a lot more than yours does, then you can certainly do it too. So maybe you guys have a point with your tactic.
Well, Hunter, I got to say, man, we started out today talking about the Supreme Court decision to tear down the Voting Rights Act. And it's really nice. Am I frozen?
A little bit.
Am I back? Sorry about that. Hunter, I was going to say, we started out today talking about the tearing down of the Voting Rights Act, MLK's work in 1965. It's so nice to finish today talking about what MLK was dreaming of in 1968 before he was gunned down, which is a poor people's movement or poor people's campaign, where the working class across race, creed, and even classes, to your point, up to the 99.99% are able to work together to build a better country. And so, where one piece of his legacy was being torn down, another piece of his legacy, and one he didn't get to complete, is being continued because of people like you. So I want to thank you, commend you, and hope you feel a sense of pride in continuing MLK's vision.
Look, it takes a village. It's going to take every single one of us to win this. So I'm happy to be part of it. And I hope you're part of it.
Right on.
Well, I know you are, but your audience.
All of us.
Thank you so much, Hunter. We hope to have you back, my friend.
Yeah, great meeting you guys, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you, brother.
Xander, we will remind folks on our socials where they can go for May Day, but go check out both 5051 and May Day. Hopefully you can participate tomorrow. I get that some folks might be in extenuating circumstances, that it might be tough to take off work or school tomorrow, but try to make that sacrifice, because this is really important to do in its own right, but also very important pre-planning for what could happen in our country in November. We want to be ready.
And importantly, we're participating, Miles. You and I are participating in May Day Strong tomorrow. So we are taking the day off, and there won't be a 2 p.m. show. But that's so we're all free to participate in this.
What are you even talking about?
2 p.m. Pacific.
Governing their lives on
Pacific
You're right. Time.
I need to at least say Pacific. I can't, or I'm just not even saying the time zone.
We will not have our weekly coffee. We will not have Defiance Daily tomorrow. It's important to participate and to send a very loud message. This is an economic boycott that is going to help us build that muscle if we need it, Xander.
Yep. We got more to get to, huh? How are we?
We're
5 minutes over. We got a little bit to get to.
We're over. Let me say one thing, Xander. This is very important. Is we spoke earlier about how smug Pete Hegseth looked in those hearings. I did what you wanted to do, which is I was like, I think I said if there was an AI generated image of smugness, it would look a lot like Pete Hegseth. I think we have that image somewhere here that I generated. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Our producer says, no, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Sending me images.
Just making up stuff. Yeah. Well, I don't recommend you try to share the screen. We tried to navigate StreamYard without Mercedes before. We failed miserably.
Yeah. That's a mistake. I shouldn't have even done it in the first place. Let's take a couple of questions, Xander. And as we do, here's a great thing to highlight as we're taking questions. Today kicks off a few days of celebration for us. Now, we're not going to be able to talk about it tomorrow, but we're going to be talking about a good bit at the beginning of next week, namely that today marks the official 6-month anniversary of Defiance. This is a big deal, my friend, because in 6 months, we have accomplished what a lot of organizations take years to accomplish. I mean that. I don't mean that in like I'm trying to pump up our members sort of way. Just go look at our website, people. Just go to defiance.org. Here we are, celebrating 6 months of Defiance. You'll see this when you go to our website. You can click on the banner and go to this page. There's an insane amount that we have accomplished in 6 months. We've grown a community beyond 100,000 people all around the country, all around the world. We have raised close to $500,000 for crucial causes to fight back against Donald Trump's abuses of power. Heck, this program, Defiance Daily, has broken into the top 20 news podcasts as rated around the world by Good Pods, and so much more. But most crucially, supporting local organizations on the ground, fighting back against Trump's invasion. As I noted earlier, having the back of whistleblowers, funding lawsuits against Donald Trump's unconstitutional actions, that and so much more you have made happen in just 6 months. Xander, as we reflect on that, I want to ask you, what are some of the things you are proudest of that have happened in the last 6 months of Defiance.org?
Well, you said, look, we pulled off, more in 6 months than organizations do in years and years. I think we are in some ways pulling things off that nonprofits never do, which is going to find gaps in the field and just catalyzing them. There isn't really a type of organization that was doing that before we were around, and we are doing it on a consistent basis, and we're increasing the cadence in which we do that. 2 weeks ago, we launched GTFO ICE. Yesterday, we teamed up with Keep Your Republic to make sure that leaders from across the country are briefed on Trump's abuse of emergency powers and what they will do when he does that. And so not only are we teaming up with the greatest leaders across the country, but we are building real infrastructure that didn't exist because this threat is new. It's a completely novel threat. And so we are not saying we're the heroes. We're teaming up with folks that have the ability to execute on the game plan, but we're catalyzing partnerships, bringing people together. And so whether it's the fight against federal overreach, GTFO ICE, or the newest effort with Dick Gephardt, former House Majority Leader, I just love that we are starting to be builders in this community. The reason we're able to do it is not because you and I are so smart, Miles. It's because we have a community behind us that gives these things launch trajectory, launch velocity. We can get them off the ground, get them to have attention, get them to have their first check in the door so they can take off. And there's no other piece of infrastructure doing this, and definitely not any other organizations doing this for this fight.
Yeah, and I will say, Xander, we very rarely are going to ask this community to double down on support. We don't want to be an organization that every week is saying to our members, give more, give more, give more, right? Much like NPR waits until like once a year to really push folks to give to the organization. Totally. This is that window. We really, really sincerely need people who are members to consider a one-time plus up to support what the organization's doing. You can do that by going to defiance.org on that 6-month member page. If you already have a monthly membership to Defiance, you can give a one-time plus up to support these efforts that are underway. You can also consider upgrading to the new and improved founding member status if you want to be an anchor of the organization, in addition to getting a signed copy of one of my books. You also get a free access to our founding member only private Signal chat. And you also get some new pretty rad founding member swag. Right now, it's the hoodie featured if you join right now as a founding member, but there's other swag that we are going to be adding. Or if you're listening to this and you are not yet subscribed to defiance.org, you're not yet a member, please do that. Become a paying member. That literally funds all of the things that we are talking about. You can see a sample of the actions that this organization has taken to fight back against Donald Trump's abuses of power. I promise you, in the future, you will not say, boy, I'm so proud that I subscribed to Netflix back in 2026. But you will say, I'm very proud to have been part of Defiance in fighting back against this moment in our history. In fact, you're not even going to remember what the hell you watched on Netflix in 2026. You will remember what was happening in the United States of America. And the beauty of this club, Xander, is you can be a part of it for whatever member fee you can afford, whether that's $1 a month or $1,000 a month. This isn't about what your means are. This is about signaling that you are actually in this fight and helping us go take that effort and rein in Donald Trump's corruption. That's why we announce real actions. And yeah, the independent new media journalism is important. It's important for us to shine a light on these abuses of power, but even more important to do something about it.
Yeah, if there's ever a day to double down, the day where the Voting Rights Act torn down and the secret police got a $70 billion budget, good day to double down. We're clearly got a worthy challenge opponent in front of us, worthy in only the dimension that they are going to be challenging to knock off because they are flailing. They want to hold on to power and they're going to do whatever they can. So we need to do whatever we can. And we're so proud to do it alongside all of you.
Now, I'll also say this. The other challenge for folks that I want to make in this moment is if you're already with us, if you're already part of the club, if you're a paying member, help us get other people in. I mean, this is how defiance movements grow. They literally grow with neighbors telling neighbors, you need to come be a part of this. It's just as important, if not more important, than plussing up your support for the movement.
100%.
For you to take this and just text it to 5 people, text it on the family chain, say, hey, or gift it to folks, gift a membership to people so they can be a part of the cause. I'm helping to run this organization day to day, and I am gifting membership out to people so that they can be a part of this movement. It's what we need to be doing. It's how we protect our democracy. This is it. We built this to be the tangible way to answer the question. I mean, when we launched in October, we said everything we do is meant to answer the question, what can I do? Because we kept getting asked that question. What do I do to protect our country? We spend all day, every day focused on answering that question, helping to support incredible causes, and making sure that where there is a gap to respond fast to the corruption that we are seeing, that we fill that gap. If there's not an effort, we go create it. I mean, that's what Xander spent all day doing, is talking to national organizations, local groups on the ground, looking at the threats we're seeing, including this week with the Voting Rights Act, actions that Donald Trump might be taking towards the midterms, and saying who can close the breach and how can we help give them catalytic funding to make that happen.
The national organizations haven't jumped on my Pacific time movement, by the way. All those meetings were at like 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. my time. But it was great sitting back-to-back in back-to-back meetings with FAFO and then GTFO ICE and seeing those efforts really pick up speed. Also, if you can't remember defiance.org for whatever reason, we purchased the domain orangemanbad.org, and that redirects you right to defiance.org. So if you want to send someone orangemanbad.org, it has the exact same effect.
I was just going to say, that might be more fun to send to people. Xander's not joking. Orangemanbad.org. That's ours now. We own that. We were also equally surprised that domain name was available, and it is, and it now redirects to defiance.org. Let me just suggest text message language to your family chain or your friend chain or your bridge players chain. Say, have you guys checked out orangemanbad.org? ? Get folks interested, bring them into the fold. Also, I see in the defiance.org member chat, Xander, that our good friend of the program, Igor Issa says, can you ask the guys, this was a question to our producer, can you ask the guys to announce new Defiance signs and stickers and cards for download and printing with fab Defiance frog designs by @Chris Palomino, now available on both my Substack and hers. Still a work in progress, but we wanted to have something for tomorrow. What is the right handle to send folks to go find those designs? The right Substack account. @Chris Palomino, and here's how it's spelled. And look into the chat if you can. @CRIS, Chris without an H, and Palomino, PALOMINO. That's on Substack @Chris CRIS PALOMINO to go look at those cool designs. And by the way, I will say we did receive.
Chris is in the chat right now too.
Yeah,
thank you, Chris.
We got a great design from y'all. The frog with the American flag and the Defiance logo. And I was just, while I was driving into Washington, D.C., was looking at how to get that uploaded into the swag store as a sticker that we can push out there with the proceeds supporting the cause. So don't worry, that's on my to-do list. I want to make sure that we can get
With
stickers.
our
and
tiny
that they're
team,
good
Miles is
stickers.
also managing the sticker creation too.
Yeah, if you had any doubt about how committed this organization is to making sure that your member fees are spent on good causes, it's that I am managing the swag store in my evenings. You know, after putting the family to bed, I'm logging into the swag store and making sure that we've got the right things up there.
We might be too committed. I'm just going to throw that
we're
out
lean,
there. We
baby.
might be
We're
too
lean.
committed.
We're lean. We're committed to the cause. But look, that allows us. Xander jokes, but we both feel passionately about that because we don't want to be a giant organization with huge overhead. We want to make sure that every dollar of member fees can go towards, as long as the operations are covered of the org, then everything above that can go directly to the causes and the fight, like the one we announced yesterday, an effort to try to sound the alarm about Donald Trump's emergency powers and make sure that those state and local officials on the front lines during the election are prepared to do the things they need to do to prevent the election from being hijacked. That's really crucial. By the way, no one was doing that literally until yesterday, until we announced that effort. No one was highlighting the fact that Donald Trump might invoke what are called his doomsday powers in Washington, the break glass in case of emergency presidential powers, and use them to hijack the election. A lot of people have been talking about things that Donald Trump might do, far off things, but no one yet making that connection this vocally about those emergency presidential powers, those doomsday powers, and the election. That's really important. And we're going to be doing great work with an organization called Keep Our Republic and hopefully Brand Center to raise awareness about that in Congress, in states, and at the local level.
Yeah, it's honestly, Miles, like that's one of those things. You do a great job of giving me credit when I come up with a usually acronym centric new campaign. But I think that is one of those cases where you being in those seats of power in your previous lives in Washington and understanding the human element of what would empower someone like you in your seat to make the right decision in those small critical windows of time. Anyways, I just want to give you flowers and make sure you know, like that's an insight. There's not that many people that have sat in the seat that you have, and Dick Esper being another one, that are now in this fight in the way you are. And we're going to be able to invest and execute on different strategies because of that. We're better. The country's better off for your participation and leadership in this fight.
Well, I'm going to take those flowers and I'm going to give you flowers, Xander, is that this organization would not have been possible without your bravery, without your defiance, without your partnership. And we got a long road ahead, folks, but this whole effort is powered by you, not possible without the Defiance is a people-powered organization, not a corporate-powered organization by Silicon Valley billionaires to do this for supports of foundations and billions of democracy. But we have built this entirely with you and you alone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if billionaires were funding it, it's a weird investment because we're investing in Mayday Strong right now and organizing everyone to fight back against billionaires. So, I mean, if they want to invest in those types of things, they're welcome to.
That's right. That's right. Well, we're going to be talking about more about all of this on Monday. And I think my mic is breaking up. I'm being told. Xander, is my mic breaking up for you, or is it working?
You know what? I wasn't sure if that was my internet. I blamed myself, as per usual.
Dang, what did I do? Of course, I disconnected something. Xander, how
no, don't make me do your sign off. Just do your sign off. It sounds good. It sounds good. You got it. Yeah. Hit us with your sign off. I always screw it.
Thank you,
don't
everyone.
do this to me.
Please go participate in Mayday Strong tomorrow. We are off the air tomorrow. We're back with you Monday. We're going to be talking more about what we've got planned in the fight to protect our democracy. In the meantime, on this 6-month anniversary of the organization, let us simply say thank you. And as always, friends, as we head into the weekend, stay loud, stay brave, and stay together. We'll see you Monday.